I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Democrats in the House of Representatives are calling for transparency. They want cameras in the federal court proceedings in connection with the criminal case against Donald Trump for his criminal conduct relating to the 2020 election and the January 6th insurrection led by Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff. These House Democrats are calling for transparency because they say, and of course I agree, it will be crucial in the trials of United States v. Donald Trump, where Donald Trump has threatened and attacked the foundation of our democracy. Here is the post that Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff made. He says, "Transparency will be crucial in the trials of the U.S. v. Donald Trump. It's why dozens of my colleagues join me today in urging that these proceedings be broadcast for the public. If the American people are to accept the outcome, it will be vitally important for them to witness as directly as possible the full facts and evidence. The same way the January 6th committee proceedings were public and how important that was. Sunshine is the greatest disinfectant, and oh, do we need sunshine in this case." I will talk about in just a moment that unlike many state court systems, federal courts generally ban cameras in the courtroom. The federal administrators who oversee the administration of the federal courts and the various judicial conferences have debated and have had studies and working groups about having cameras in the courtroom, and over the years they've rejected it. But that could be changed if the Chief Justice, John Roberts of the Supreme Court, were to implement another rule, or if Congress were to pass a law. And more on that in a moment, because back in April of 2023, there seemed to be, not too far long ago, you had even MAGA Republican Senator Chuck Grassley was saying that he wants cameras in federal courtrooms for transparency. I think the MAGA Republicans were doing it because they were trying to spread their conspiracies about the January 6th insurrectionists, but Democrats are like, there ain't nothing to hide there. Bring cameras into the courtroom. Bet we agree with that. Here is the letter sent by Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff to the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. It's written to the head judge who oversees the administrative courts, Judge Maskoff, and the letter from Schiff and the Democrats state the following. "Dear Judge Maskoff, we are writing to request the Judicial Conference explicitly authorize the broadcasting of court proceedings in the case of United States of America v. Donald J. Trump. It is imperative the conference ensures timely access to accurate and reliable information surrounding these cases and all of their proceedings, given the extraordinary national importance to our democratic institutions and the need for transparency. As the policy-making body for the federal courts, the Judicial Conference has historically supported increased transparency and public access to the court's activities." I'm not sure I agree with Adam Schiff there, but I would have liked them to do that, but I think that they've usually have rejected transparency, much to my disappointment, but I'll go on. "Given the historic nature of the charges brought forth in these cases, it's hard to imagine a more powerful circumstance for televised proceedings. If the public is to fully accept the outcome, it will be vitally important for it to witness as directly as possible how the trials are conducted, the strength of the evidence adduced, and the credibility of witnesses. We urge the conference to take additional steps, including live broadcasting, to ensure the facts of this case are brought forward, unfiltered to the public," and it's signed by Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff and various Democrats. Dozens of them also signed on to this letter. No word back yet from the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. But look, this is what Trump's lawyer John Lauro said back in July 21, 2023. Trump's new attorney, according to Caitlin Collins, when Trump's new attorney John Lauro was hired, he said that the first thing he's going to ask for are cameras in the courtroom. Quote, "And I would hope that the Department of Justice would join in that effort so that we can take the curtain away and all Americans can see what's happening." But, that's just more Donald Trump gaslighting. But Donald Trump's lawyer saying, we want cameras in the courtroom. But, Donald Trump will ultimately oppose it. Democratic members of Congress saying they want cameras in there. And by the way, I don't think the DOJ is going to have any objection to that. So we will see at the August 28th hearing, it's the next big hearing before federal judge Chutkin, whether or not the Department of Justice will say, hey, we're okay with cameras in the courtroom. Now, this would be a deviation from the historical policies regarding cameras in courts. Electronic media coverage of criminal proceedings in federal courts has been expressly prohibited under Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 53 since the criminal rules were adopted in 1946. Rule 53 states, except as otherwise provided by a statute or these rules, the court must not permit the taking of photographs in the courtroom during judicial proceedings or the broadcasting of judicial proceedings from the courtroom. There are some exceptions where a judge may authorize broadcasting, televising, recording, or taking photographs in the courtroom and in adjacent areas during investive, naturalization, or other ceremonial proceedings only. A judge may authorize such activities in the courtroom or adjacent areas during other proceedings or recesses between such other proceedings only for the presentation of evidence, for the perpetuation of the recording of the proceedings, for security purposes, for other purposes of judicial administration, for the photographing, recording, or broadcasting of appellate arguments, or in accordance with pilot programs approved by the Judicial Conference. And there have been some pilot programs, for example, in the Ninth Circuit, where cameras have been allowed in certain civil cases, but there really isn't any widespread adopted policy for cameras to be allowed in the courtroom. But again, that could change by statute. And so one thing that could happen, for example, is if a law is passed in the House of Representatives and the Senate, and back in April of 2023, there was a bipartisan group of senators who were talking about cameras in the federal courtrooms, and even Senator Chuck Grassley, a Republican from Iowa, he's someone who's championed legislation to end the court system's camera prohibition. And he said, I think it's just a matter of getting it on the agenda and it will become law. But look, you ultimately know when push comes to shove, this is all gaslighting by MAGA Republicans. They say this, but what they'd rather have is like this. John Lauro, the attorney for Trump, this was his Sunday schedule. He did This Week, Meet the Press, State of the Union, Face the Nation, Fox News Sunday, just goes on all of the channels. But I want to hear from Neil Katyal. I think he's a great lawyer, former principal solicitor general at the DOJ, argued the independent state legislature doctrine case and won that one, an incredible win for democracy. Here he is on MSNBC saying that he believes that this should be televised.
The other thing is that this case, United States versus Trump, is really different than anything else. I mean, this is one of the defining cases of American history, not just in our lifetimes. It's obviously the most important case in our lifetimes, but in American history. And so I do think, it's possible to think of this case operating a little differently than other cases. Yeah. And, the concern on the other side, I think the best argument is, well, if you look at, for example, the O.J. Simpson trial, there was a lot of, lack of decorum around the courtroom proceedings, and television and televising those proceedings may have contributed to that. And I think there's two fundamental differences. One is, again, this is not the, some athlete charged with, crime of violence. This is the president of the United States, as the president of the United States, being charged for his behavior while president, being charged with basically trying to launch a coup to keep himself in power. It goes to the essence of what our democracy is. The second is, don't underestimate Donald Trump's ability to try and, say stuff outside of court, and his party and his lawyers and so many others, all of which can undermine the decorum anyway. The best check on that, this is something one of our greatest justices, Louis Brandeis, said, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Let the American people see this trial for themselves day in and day out and make their own determinations. We shouldn't be, relegated to secondhand descriptions and some courtroom sketches of what's going on in that courtroom.
Here is the former director of Office of Public Affairs at the Department of Justice, Anthony Cooley. He believes, of course, there should be a bright light of transparency on cases like this. Play the clip.
You believe this trial should be televised. Why?
I do. I think the bright light of transparency is the best disinfectant against misinformation. And there are one of two ways to do this, Jonathan. The first is that the Judicial Conference of the United States, that's the policymaking body of federal judges, they can change the rules. They meet semi-annually. The next meeting is in September. It should be on the top of the list. The second way to do it is via an act of Congress. And so if the Judicial Conference doesn't take that action, my hope is that Congress does. And Neil wrote an amazing op-ed about this in the Washington Post on Thursday. Neil, the only bone I have to pick with your op-ed is that I didn't write it first. But other than that, it was pretty perfect.
So look, we here at the MeidasTouch Network, we'll use our bully pulpit to call for transparency and to have cameras in the courtroom. I'd love for our cameras at the MeidasTouch Network to be there in the courtroom. But look, do you think Donald Trump's really going to request it when push comes to shove? I doubt it. But if his lawyers want it, I'd like the Department of Justice to meet and confer with Trump's lawyers and ask the judge in the August 28th hearing, hey, Trump's lawyers say they want cameras. We're good with cameras. Let's do it. Call his bluff, Jack Smith. Call his bluff. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1.5 million subscribers thanks to your support. Go to MeidasTouch.com, #1 pro-democracy site out there right now. MeidasTouch.com, MeidasTouch.com. Wherever audio podcasts are available, subscribe to the MeidasTouch podcast and have a great day.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.